Looking for recommendations for a high value treat for training. Currently has chicken but is becoming bored of it and not as obedient on walks. That's a really good question. When it comes to high value treats, you definitely want to get the most out of them when you do use them. However, what you risk running across is a scenario where no matter what high value treat you get, if the environment where you're trying to use it to distract, get your dog's attention is too overwhelming, stimulating, distracting, then ultimately the issue is not really the treat itself, but rather the environment. And so rather than looking at a different high value treat, I would start with first wondering why it's maybe so difficult for the dog to be as obedient on walks. And by obedient, I guess he means he's not as attentive, he's more distracted, he is having a tougher time focusing on you and so on the person. And so I would recommend working through different levels of distraction. Perhaps the walk is a distracting environment from 10 out of 10 perspective, but rather if we start working on getting our dog or puppy to focus with us while just opening the door a little bit, just having the leash on and opening the door, taking a few steps out, coming back in. If that's too much, then opening the door just a little bit more, nothing more than that yet, so that we can actually build the association of chicken with or whatever treat you want to use with the environment that is not too distracting, but that can actually be successful, and thus associate the food or whatever treat you want to give with the success of that environment that is a little bit more curated and set up for you both to succeed. So this doesn't mean you can't at all try a higher value treat. It may work, but you likely will run into the scenario where you keep having to look for a newer, higher value treat to do your best to address the fact that there's a bit of a disconnect there in that environment. And so by no means am I also saying that you can't go on walks. If you have a young dog or puppy that really needs to go for that bathroom break, go get it out of the way, but then come back, bring out the chicken, and start working with little distractions where you find as though your puppy can give you their attention, your dog can give you their focus, but it's in a much more successful way. And it's because of the environment being manageable, being a lot more doable for where you're at, as opposed to because of the treat that you have, which is then of course becoming the clutch. It ends up becoming what you and your puppy have to lean on, your dog have to lean on all the time, as opposed to you guys leaning on the connection that you have, the bond that you have, the relationship that you have, that with time you can test by taking it through more difficult, more challenging environments. So before getting or purchasing a higher value treat for training, I would look into what kinds of environments are we currently trying to do training within, to see if we can maybe make it a little bit easier to find just as much success as you did before or in other settings with chicken or with whatever treat you have, so that you can then slowly work your way off of that setting and be a lot more successful.